Hey, you're listening to Scam Me, the podcast that breaks down online safety and scams without the boring bits. We're here thanks to Inclusive Change at Work CIC, Avon and Somerset PCC, and Culture Gem. Let's get into it.
Hi there, it's Lucy here from Inclusive Change at Work. And we're talking here today about scams. And in particular, we're on our podcast, Scam Me, from Project Sandbox, which is part of Inclusive Change at Work. We're trying to build digital skills for all, including neurodivergent and disabled people in our communities. There's a whole load of things that we want to talk about in Scam Me. And one of them in particular is on the tip of everybody's tongue, and that's AI, artificial intelligence. And I'm joined today by Laura Gemmell, who I'm pretty much going to call you, Laura, an AI expert. I don't know what else to call you.
I'll accept that. That's great.
So, Laura, tell me a bit about you and what you do and why I can call you an AI expert.
So I run a company called Taught by Humans, and really love what you said, Lucy. We're actually trying to make sure everybody has the data and AI skills they need to exist as the world is changing. So this means we work with a lot of small businesses and organizations to help people learn about AI and data. And what we say is we try to help them learn in a way that works for them, because not everybody needs to know these things to the same level, and some people only need to know a little bit. So we just try to help people learn what they need to know. I like being called an AI expert. I'm unsure how true that is, but I have been working in AI and data for about 10 years. I'm very interested in how these technologies impact society and human beings.
So hang on a minute, right? You said working in this area for 10 years. Surely AI wasn't around back then?
That's a common thing people think. So I can give you a little bit of background. So the term AI was actually first said in 1960. It's a really long time ago. So the word has been around for a really long time. And even before then, if anybody's seen the movie The Imitation Game or ever heard of Alan Turing, he used to talk about something called machine intelligence, which is pretty much what led into being artificial intelligence. So not necessarily new technologies. To give a bit of background, in 2023, this bit of software was released called ChatGPT, which I assume some people might have heard of. Yeah. And ChatGPT is conversational artificial intelligence, a type of artificial intelligence that we call generative. So what it does is actually generates new content. So that could be words on the screen, images, videos, or voice recordings. And this was the first time people actually got to play with this type of AI and actually, like I say, being hands-on, because you could actually talk to it. And this was a big breakthrough. And since 2023, I think everybody's been talking about ChatGPT. So I kind of say that that's the current wave of AI that we're in, that everybody's just talking about. But generally, the technology is not that new.
Thank you. And I kind of had a feeling it was more than 10 years, that it's been around, or more than even a few years, since 2023. So you've kind of answered what is AI. So let's think about some questions about AI in terms of what the concerns people have about AI.
So there are a lot of concerns people have. So one of the big things is people don't necessarily trust it. So if you maybe don't use technology as much as I do, I'm on a computer all day, most days. I understand how to read the terms and conditions whenever new technologies come out. If you aren't able to do that and you don't understand it, I can completely understand not trusting these technologies, because you don't know how much you should be telling them about yourself or what someone's going to do with the data. So I think learning which ones you should trust, and maybe having a trusted person, whether that's me or someone else, like we all trust Martin Lewis to tell us what to do with our money. So I think having someone similar like that for AI is quite good, who can help recommend tools you might use. The other thing is there is a data privacy concern. So whenever ChatGPT initially came out, people were giving it passwords and way too much information about themselves. And
Oh my
similarly,
goodness.
and things like research data, or if you work for a business, you shouldn't be giving away customer data. So just thinking about what you put into these machines and tools, because they still have to meet all the data privacy rules. Basically, I kind of use it like if you wouldn't talk to a stranger about this, or you wouldn't want to put it in a blog on the internet, don't put it into these tools. So you can tell it anything else, but if you wouldn't want it out on the internet anyway, probably don't tell them. Other things around it are things like how secure they are. So is your data going to get leaked? Or moving into more serious concerns around fraud and things like that. If you're uploading videos or voice of yourself, it can be copied with this thing we call deep fakes. So this is a big problem for banking. Whenever you sometimes have to take a video on your phone to prove you are who you say you are, if technology can copy you from only like a little snippet of your voice, then that is a concern. That concerns me. So that's one of those things. I often don't let my voice be recorded by these AI voice recorders, but I'm quite cautious. I don't think it's all doom and gloom. No, I think these are just things you need to think about and then consider whenever you're using them. Maybe use more trusted companies than just using whatever AI tool is out there.
So can we just talk about different types of AI? So you mentioned chat. What other examples are there of AI? What other examples of artificial intelligence are in our lives right now? What are people using?
So I mentioned generative AI, the type of AI that generates stuff that's like quite new. Before that, I don't really know what you call it. It's probably more mathematical AI or non-generative AI. And it's more closer to what people think of as machine learning. So it's getting lots of data, learning patterns from it, and then making a decision off the back of that. And that is used all the time in everyday life. So when you're watching Netflix, or you're listening to a song on Spotify, or when you shop, if you get a recommendation for something, that is actually machine learning recommending that for you. So it uses data to get to know you, to think that you're similar to someone else. Also within tools you use, so if you use Zoom for work, for example, currently that records transcripts of you. So that is using AI to record the transcript and summarize it. So AI is common in a lot of everyday life that we're already seeing. And similarly, things like banking decisions, so credit risk scoring, so deciding whether or not we should lend to you, has been using artificial intelligence for a really long time.
Wow. So those tools there's some that's been around forever. And when you talk about social media or Netflix or recommendations, those algorithms are things that's linked, isn't it, to the machine learning.
Yes. And things like, actually, I totally forgot to say, like filters on Snapchat and TikTok is definitely another type of machine learning. So I would say that was image recognition. So you know how it can work out exactly. So in my head, I always think of turning yourself into a dog. So it knows exactly where your nose is and where your top of your head is, so it can put the ears in. So that is an AI algorithm looking at your face and being like, this is where your nose is, this is where I need to put this. So yeah, we use AI all the time, even without thinking about it.
Oh, wow. Right. Okay. So how can we keep on top of those security risks then? You mentioned things like deep fakes or voice recordings. How can we keep on top of it? What things can we do to keep ourselves safe?
So I think the deep fake things goes a little bit further than AI. It goes a little bit more into scams in general. So if a random number calls your phone, don't necessarily talk to it, because that could be something recording. Don't if a new bit of technology comes out that you haven't seen anyone say is safe, don't be recording videos and voice notes and uploading pictures of yourself to it. So I think it's just being aware that not everybody is trustworthy. Most people are, but not everybody is trustworthy. So if it seems too good to be true, so if there's an offer like, if you upload this video, you can win this and win that, that's unlikely to be true. If you don't know the company that made the technology, so we're getting lots of different AI tools out at the minute. So like, for example, I run Taught by Humans. We use an AI to help recommend learning courses to people. We have really strict terms and conditions. We explain exactly where your data gets saved and what we do with it. And if the company can't do that, then, and if they haven't done it in simple language, then maybe they're trying to hide something. So it's just something to think about. So yeah, I think just be aware of where you're like getting recorded. and what's being done with that recording. Yeah, that would be my advice. I think also if it happens, and it's not your fault most of the time. At the minute, these scammers are trying to scam people, and it's very easy to fall victim to it. So I think just be careful where you can.
Thank you. How can we then reassure people that AI is not dangerous and that we can keep on top of the risks?
So I think where the risks come, and I know there is regulations, so like legal rules coming out in the European Union, and the UK might follow suit to try and protect how data is being used and saved. And there's regulations called GDPR, which you'll see whenever all the pop-ups come up on the screen, because you have to agree to cookies being tracked and things like that.
And cookies? Are we talking chocolate chip? What are we talking here?
Unfortunately not. So whenever you go on a website, your data is very valuable to people. So like which website you were on before, if they can tell which part of the world you're in, they use that for marketing so they can sell you more stuff basically. And it actually takes a lot of data from your computer, not anything scary, just like metrics about you. And actually, because of these rules in the European Union, that's why we get all these pop-ups now saying reject or accept on every single website that you're on, because you have to let it know if you're okay with cookies. Which isn't a big deal, but mostly I click reject just to be annoying. Yeah, it's mostly just to see where you are in the world and things like that. So with that, I think some rules are going to come in around AI, but it's moving very fast, so it's very hard to keep up to date with this. I would give some advice, I guess, if you already use Google or Outlook, both Google and Microsoft have AI. So Google has Gemini and Microsoft has Copilot. You already trust them with some of your data. So, and they're big tech companies who are held probably under a microscope more than other companies, because everyone's watching what they're doing. So that would be my personal opinion, is trust what you already know.
Yeah. And are there any things that you would say totally avoid? Don't get into this right now.
Any companies that are recording videos and voice for no reason. So there are reasons, right, that people might record your voice. We know note takers are very big and are very helpful for people who are neurodiverse and calls and things like this. It's important just to check the data privacy ones. If you Google it, someone will have written a blog somewhere. Someone who knows about data privacy will have written a blog saying this is the one you should use, or something like that. I think anything that's recording you, just remember that someone else, if that falls into the wrong hands, could use that. But then the same applies to social media. If you're recording TikTok videos of yourself and stuff like that. So it's not just AI, it's just technology in general.
So that kind of leads me into a question. So at Scam Me and Inclusive Change at Work, we talk about neurodiversity. And so there are loads of tools out there that are really super helpful for neurodivergent people. And you just mentioned one, note takers. How can we use these in a way that's beneficial, and how? Yeah, I'll just leave it there. How can we use tools and AI tools that can be beneficial for neurodivergent people?
Sure. So I am quite severely dyslexic, and I find tools like ChatGPT really helpful to help me get my point across written down. So while I'm talking really good about AI at the minute, when I try to write about it, it doesn't come across in the same way. And I think it's because my brain jumps around like this, which when you're talking, you can like connect things back together. But when you're writing, it does have to kind of flow in a logical order. And I found that actually just being able to put my thoughts in on a topic to ChatGPT and then put like, this is what I'm trying to say here. And then it can actually then talk in my tone of voice and write it back to me. So I've been submitting some grants for my business, and I usually don't get very good scores on them because I can't get my point across. It's just like, I know what I'm trying to say. If they would interview me, it would be fine, but they don't. And actually, for the first time, for one of the grants, we're through to the next round. Yeah, I'm very excited.
Congratulations.
What I actually did was get ChatGPT. I trained it on how I talk. So I gave it lots of writing samples and voice recordings of me, like things like public speeches I've done and stuff like that. got it to summarize how I talk. When I was happy with it writing like me and using the same sort of words as me, I went through all the questions and just wrote my notes for them in ChatGPT, and then it gave me an answer back, and I went through and edited it myself to make it sound. But I found that much easier because it was like the structure was there, my thoughts were there in a logical order, and then I could edit them. And I think that's an excellent way of doing it. And if you trust any of the voice recorders as well, so a lot of people use, I can't remember the name, I think it's Fathom at the minute.
Yes, I use Fathom,
yeah, it has a good data privacy policy.
Yeah, that's why we chose it, actually, because of the policy.
Yeah. So it's really good for example, if you're not very good at taking notes in meetings, or if you want to record yourself doing something, which can really help. Another thing I've heard people say that is really helpful is, particularly for people with ADHD, it can help you prioritize. So again, you can just put everything you're thinking in your head into ChatGPT or Copilot or Claude or any of these chatbots and say, I don't really know what I should be doing first. I don't know what I should be focusing on. And it can help put a logical order to stuff of what you should do. And it might say, it's actually quite good. I use this because I run a business by myself, but sometimes it's like, that might feel important to you, but it doesn't feel like it's actually that important yet. So it's good. So yeah, using it to help organize yourself or organize your thoughts. And help you prioritize, because sometimes I think one of the things I like it for is sometimes you're just stuck in your head, particularly if you're working from home or doing something by yourself, and it can be really helpful for things like that. And also it can help speed up boring tasks. And I don't know if I mean boring or repetitive, but if you do the same thing every day, you can then actually use the AI to help you do it faster, which is really good, because then it frees you up to be more creative. And I know particularly neurodiverse people like being creative and like having more free time to think and do things. So if we can speed up the admin tasks, then that's really helpful as well.
That's really cool.
Hey, let's be honest. Compliance training is usually awful. But Culture Gem flips the script. It's the world's first fully inclusive, accessible training platform with 8 learning styles, colour customization, and even an escape room video game. And their phishing simulator? You build the scam. It sticks better that way. Smarter training, better retention, and it doesn't cost the earth. Try it free at culturegem.co.uk. Do you want to create a more inclusive digital world? Project Sandbox from Inclusive Change at Work is a groundbreaking podcast training program for young people. They learn digital skills, build confidence, and tackle online safety through lived experience. Sponsor an episode and be part of real change. Visit icall-cic.com/sandbox to get involved.
So if somebody was listening to this, though, who is at school or university, something you just described a bit earlier around using ChatGPT or using AI to collate your thoughts and then ask it to come up with a text for a grant application, that's a work-based example. And actually, for me, that's how we should be using it, right? But if we're talking to somebody who's a bit younger and is still at school and their teachers are saying, you cannot use AI, isn't it a bit cheating?
I think this is a really complicated topic, and I think it comes down to what you're trying to learn, right? So if like I'll use coding as the example. So learning how to write code to build a website or something, you can just go to ChatGPT now and ask it to write the code for you. The website will work. If your end goal is to get a website, fine, you've done it. But actually, there's a lot of learning in the learning process. So learning how to break things, learning how to look at the code when it's not working, getting feedback on the bit that you wrote, deciding why the colors are the colors. So I think that is the bit that we need to be really careful that we don't use in learning. And I think that's what teachers are scared of. So again, essay writing, I was going to say, like, I hate writing essays, but sometimes it's not what you learned in history or English. It's actually writing the essay that you're being graded on. So I think sometimes thinking, okay, what's the point of this? And what's the bit that's really important for me to do? It's the same way, like when I was in school, we were told you won't walk around with calculators in your pocket, so you need to learn how to do math. Everybody has a
look at what we have now.
Everybody has a calculator in their pocket now, but
Yeah.
being able to do calculations is probably the reason I code now. So I think the process and the learning is really important. And if the task you're doing isn't a research task, then maybe going to ChatGPT to look at to do some research and then going away and writing it yourself, fine. If the task is a research task, then actually going and researching is part of what you're learning how to do.
So thinking about some of the positives here, right? What skills do you think will be most valuable for those who want to enter the AI industry in the next 5 to 10 years? And how can people start developing them today?
So I think there's a mix of types of skills. So I think being confident with technology is really important. So technology is moving really fast. So being able to learn a new technology skill quickly is probably one of the most valuable skills. So being able to pick it up, being able to play around with it, and then being comfortable using it very fast. And that can be built on, though. You can learn different skills. And actually, I think we underestimate our technology skills a lot. Like we're on our phones all day. You've probably learned some really good skills. If you're into social media, you've probably taken pictures and edited them. So thinking about that, and that is you using technology, even if it doesn't feel like it. I do think being comfortable with AI, or being able to talk about AI comfortably, and I say comfortably because you don't necessarily need to be an expert, right? You just need to be able to be keeping up with things. On the other side, I actually think two of the most important skills that anyone's going to have in the future is like being curious and being able to experiment. So that's why I am where I am, because when I find something I'm interested in, I just play around with it. And I play around with it until it breaks, and then I'll be like, okay, I'll understand why that broke. But everything is moving so fast that education isn't going to keep up. So you actually need to be curious enough to go and learn about these things by yourself. And
if we stick with what we're taught at school, it's not keeping up with technology, is it?
Exactly. And it's so far behind. And then I do also think, and this is kind of the entire point of my business, is I think everybody's going to have to be learning for their whole life. And that isn't necessarily what happened before you went to school and maybe you went to university, but you got a job and that was your job for forever. And you just did that. Whereas I'm a millennial. It was kind of drilled into us that we had to learn forever. So we know our job wasn't going to be our job. Jobs aren't secure. And I think even more so. And I think when I'm looking at people I'm hiring, because I've been hiring some interns out of university, actually I don't even care if they know how to do things. Like if they're willing to learn how to do it. Yeah.
No, definitely. Well, so just another flip on the concern side. Do you think AI will replace people's jobs in the future?
I think it's very, I don't know what the word is. I think it's going to be balanced, right? So I think it will replace individual people's jobs. And I'll come back to that in a second because I'm not going over it. But I think on the whole, there's going to be a point where there's more jobs because there's going to be a load of new jobs created. I do think it is going to be a problem because while we can say, yay, more jobs, the people who lose their jobs, it's going to be really awful for them, right?
Yeah.
And that's one of the things that I'm really passionate about, is making sure we have a pathway or a way for them to get back into work. So maybe if we take the example of, we think a lot of call center jobs might be replaced because these chatbots are good at doing customer service. Maybe there is a job in data. So these AIs need a lot of data to work, and the data needs labeled, and the data needs cleaned, and the data needs this. And that actually is a job that most people can learn how to do. And it might be nicer than a call center job to some people. It might not to some people who like chatting to people. But those people that actually would be comfortable doing that, there's currently no way for them to learn how to get into it. And things like the chatbot responses on the customer service will need checked by a person for a while. Yeah. So how do we train up the people who can do that? So I think that's what we need to focus on at the minute.
Yeah.
And then in the future, I don't know, we've said this for years. So there was a point where we thought all carpenters were going to lose their job because robots were going to take them. And then the next one was all accountants are going to lose their job because automation is going to take them. And there was a point when the UK government had weirdly done this calculation that seemed that like waiters and waitresses were the job that was most at risk, because I think there was a lot of service robots at the time.
Yeah.
So we change our mind all the time. This is going on, like these estimates are at least, like, some of them are 12 years old. So we change our mind all the time on what jobs are going to be replaced. I don't know what's going to happen. At the minute, it feels like customer service. But again, maybe we'll replace them and then realize that's a bad idea, and actually people like people.
People do like people, I think. And I have this thought that actually AI and all of the changes we're seeing in technology, and it's driven by people, because we're the ones that are wanting it to happen, or the demand must be there, because if the demand wasn't there, it wouldn't be created, would it?
It's complicated, isn't it? Because businesses at the end of the day try to make money.
Yeah.
So businesses want money. I think with the customer service example, if I'm being optimistic,
Yeah.
what I think will happen is similar to what happened with banks. So whenever automated teller machines, which is what ATMs actually stands for, were rolled out, it was predicted that there'd be no one would work in a bank ever again, and all the bank tellers would get fired. And I think there was a small period of time where a lot of them did get fired, or they did get transitioned. But what's happened now is that's a more specialist job. So one, it's a customer service job, but people come in to talk about their savings and their mortgage. They don't come in to get £100 out of the bank. They go to the ATM to do that. So it's actually become a more people-y job than it was before. And I think that's how customer service could go. So I think one company found that 80% of the people calling into their call center were asking questions that could be answered online. So like, when do I have to pay this by? Can I change the date the payment comes out? Things like that. So actually a chatbot can answer that. And then the people that are actually having problems can get through to the person on the phone. And actually that's a better experience because they're not in a queue for as long.
This is sparking something in my mind, though, around older people and maybe people who don't use technology very well. How is it going to affect them? Because if there aren't, the banking is a really good example, because there's so many bank closures and branches closing that you have to travel miles to get somewhere, but they find it hard to talk online or to go online. How can we help older people embrace or be more digitally included rather than excluded?
I actually think there's just a teaching moment to be had, which is when something doesn't work, it's not always your fault. So I think that is a bit of the confidence level. And I can give an example of, the automated self-checkout in Tesco's or something, right?
Yeah.
When it doesn't work for me, I think in my head, this is stupid. This machine is not working. Whereas if you're not confident with technology, like my grandmother, for example, thinks that it's her fault when it doesn't work. So I think that there's a level of confidence that once you're confident enough, you're like, okay, this probably isn't my fault. I think it's just thinking about it. And I think because older people in particular are so uncertain sometimes about technology, that as soon as anything goes wrong, they assume they've done it wrong and they never try it again. So I think banks probably have a responsibility to make sure they're helping educate people in how to use the online services, or maybe telephone services, making them easier to use and things like that. So automation isn't always better. I, for example, was trying to get through to an American company recently, and you had to talk automated on the phone, and it could not understand my accent, and it hung up on me 3 times, and I was getting very frustrated, and it was costing me money because I was calling the US. And it was causing me quite a lot of annoyance, and I am technologically savvy. So I was thinking how awful that would be for someone that is sat there thinking they're doing something wrong, whereas I was like, oh, stupid computer.
Well, if you think of people, somebody who's got cerebral palsy, for instance, or and their speech is different, actually a lot of tech they're not able to have speech to text on their computers unless it's a very specific brand or niche, because they generally can't understand their voice.
So this is where actually making sure we have more diverse people working in technology and AI and data is really important, because if it's designed by the few, then it's only going to meet the needs of the few. So there's this really excellent saying, I can't remember who said it, but it's making sure AI works for the 8 billion, not the 8 billionaires, which I think is really important. I really like that. Making sure it works for everyone and that it isn't disadvantaging people. So I'm not sure what the solution is, but I do just think that everyone that is designing systems needs to be thinking, okay, this doesn't necessarily, like things like doing checking whether or not your emotions on your face, right? So an example from this is I get migraines, and when I have a migraine, one of my eyes kind of droops a little bit, and I probably don't smile. So if I was like doing a course or something that was tracking if I was cheating, I'm positive it would flag that I was cheating whenever I had a migraine, but actually I'd just be having a headache, I'd just be having a migraine and just being sick, but having to be on a call. Or like not everyone makes facial expressions the same. So how can you track emotions from someone's facial expressions? So yeah, I think that technology like that needs to definitely make sure there's diverse people inputting into that before we start telling people how their face should be held on a call.
I totally get that, and I have concerns about that around recruitment and ATS. I think automated tracking systems and AI being used in an interview, because nowadays you can be interviewed by a bot. You don't always get interviewed by a recruitment panel, and then that it will synthesize the responses, including your facial expressions. And if you're autistic, you may very well find that you're screened out because your facial expressions aren't typical.
Which is definitely not where we want to be going with this technology. And even things like it wouldn't account for nerves, whereas a human interviewing you can be like, okay, they were nervous.
You get it.
I can set that aside, like it's an interview. Whereas an AI system, no one's going to think to train it to check on, how would you even train it to check on nerves? I think it's important to make sure humans still exist in human processes.
I think that's a really good thing to say. Humans still exist in human processes. Just fantastic. Right, let's finish on, what are you excited about? What breakthroughs in AI are you most excited about?
I'm going to give 2 examples, I think, that are really helpful. So we talked about generative AI, and it's not necessarily a breakthrough, but a nice use case is people actually being able to send better emails. So I've heard the story of a taxi driver who has excellent spoken English, but not necessarily very good written English, because he learned English through talking. Wonderful taxi driver, gets excellent reviews from his customers. But what he noticed when he was sending emails, people like stopped replying. And ChatGPT was able to take his emails and make them written in a way that other people related to him. And it made his business better, but also it meant that he could learn written English better because he saw what he was supposed to be doing. So that is something
brilliant. I like that.
I like it. It's a learning exercise. It's very simple. And also something that maybe people might be embarrassed to talk about with other people. So like maybe like wanting to go get like English tutoring lessons, one wasn't affordable or just wasn't something that made them feel right. The other one is on the non-generative AI side, we've actually had this breakthrough in breast cancer screenings, that an AI can work out that a woman has breast cancer 5 years before a doctor.
Wow.
Yeah, so they've tested it and they still can't really work out what it's seeing, like what the initial things. It's obviously so minuscule what it's seeing, but they've been testing out on images, and it seems to have a really good. So whenever the AI does something wrong, it's called a false positive, which obviously in something like breast cancer screenings is quite a big deal. But it seems to have a really low false positive rate, which isn't what usually happens. So this could be a massive breakthrough in diagnosing cancer in women earlier and being able to treat them earlier.
That's amazing. And if you think that that could be replicated across different areas of healthcare, then the impact of that is going to be amazing.
Yeah. Like I think it's good. We hear all these stories about using it in business, but actually there's areas around education and medicine and things where actually the impacts are so much wider. So I think it's good to focus on those use cases.
Oh, definitely. I think so. And it's about being realistic and balanced about things, isn't it? Thank you so much, Laura. Is there anything you want to add before we wrap up?
No, I think I'll just say I understand people being weary and scared of AI, but you definitely don't need to be. And if you want to learn, one, Taught by Humans can help, but two,
Yeah.
there are lots of resources on the internet, and I think just actually doing some reading, playing around with whatever AI you can use, like get Gemini or Copilot, is a great start. But yeah, while you need to be wary, don't be scared.
Thank you. That's amazing. Right. Well, we'll wrap up. I'm Lucy. We've been talking to Laura from Taught by Humans all about AI, artificial intelligence, for part of Scam Me, our podcast, all about raising digital awareness for neurodivergent and disabled people. Thank you.
That's a wrap on this episode of Scam Me. Brought to you by Project Sandbox from Inclusive Change at Work CIC, funded by Avon and Somerset Police and Crime Commissioner, supported by South Gloss Disability Equality Network, and sponsored by Culture Gem. Catch you next time, and stay safe out there.